What if WWF bought ECW 2 years earlier in 1999? A time when ECW's roster was full of future Hall of Famers. That acquisition sets the stage for WWF versus ECW. Life sentence. A night of first-time meetings, dream matches, and one scoreboard to decide the future of ECW. World Wrestling Federation presents ECW Life Sentence. The event opened with a match that immediately set the stakes for the entire event. Sabu stepping up for ECW against Kane of the WWF in a flaming table match, a stipulation that elevated the danger far beyond a standard opener. With fire serving as both the weapon and the finish condition, every moment carried the threat of instant defeat. The stipulation alone favored neither man on paper, but it carried a unique layer of meaning for Kane. Fire has followed his career from the very beginning, whether as symbolism, trauma, or part of his in-ring identity. In a match where the deciding factor is literally flames, Kane's history became part of the story before the bell even rang. Sabu entered first, representing ECW on home ground and bringing the unpredictable style that has defined his legacy. He tried repeatedly to use the environment to his advantage, knowing the stipulation played into his willingness to take extreme risks. But despite Sabu's creativity and relentlessness, Kane's power gradually overtook the rhythm of the match. The flaming table remained the central threat throughout, and Kane's composure around it contrasted sharply with Sabu's attempts to navigate the danger. Ultimately, Kane seized the decisive moment. After wearing Sabu down, he delivered a chokeslam that sent Sabu crashing through the burning table, ending the match in commanding fashion. With that, the WWF secured the first point of the night. The second match of Life Sentence shifted the focus from singles competition to a test of depth and unity as Team ECW faced Team WWF in a 4-on-4 elimination match. On paper, ECW entered with the advantage in collective experience. Masato Tanaka, Jerry Lynn, Tommy Dreamer, and Steve Corino brought years of shared environments, similar styles, and a familiarity with high-pressure scenarios. The question, however, was whether that experience could translate into results with the event's survival stakes hanging over them. The WWF lineup, Jeff Hardy, Chyna, Christian, and Bob Holly, presented a very different dynamic. A mixture of rising stars and established toughness, the team relied less on chemistry and more on individual strengths. As the eliminations began, both sides traded momentum, neither allowing the other to build a decisive lead. Each elimination felt like a reset, emphasizing how evenly matched the teams were despite their stylistic differences. By the time the dust settled, the match came down to two competitors, Masato Tanaka for ECW and Bob Holly for the WWF. Their showdown represented more than just the tail end of an elimination match. For Tanaka, this was an opportunity to prove worth not only to ECW, but also to the WWF officials observing the event. Tanaka secured the final elimination, giving Team ECW the victory and tying the night's score. With this result, ECW evens the tally at 1-1. The third match of Life Sentence was one that, by all reasonable standards, never should have been sanctioned. Yet the combined influence of Vince McMahon and Paul Heyman produced one of the most unusual booking decisions of the entire interpromotional event. New Jack versus Mae Young in a no-holds-barred match. The decision appeared to stem less from competitive logic and more from the understanding that the ECW audience had a taste for spectacle and shock value. Mae Young entered with the same fearlessness that had defined her late career resurgence, but the match itself was inherently lopsided. New Jack, known for his willingness to push every boundary imaginable, treated the stipulation as an open invitation. The setup ensured an uncomfortable pairing, one driven not by rivalry or storyline, but by the promoter's belief in what would draw attention on ECW turf. The match lasted 5 minutes, during which Mae showed her trademark toughness, but the disparity in style and intensity was impossible to ignore. New Jack ultimately ended the contest by powerbombing Mae Young at ringside, a moment that solidified the result but also underscored the questionable nature of the booking. He secured the pin immediately afterward, giving ECW another point on a night where every score carried consequences. With this outcome, ECW moves ahead 2-1 as the event continued to escalate in both stakes and unpredictability. In the aftermath of the match, Mae Young made a point to show that she was far from finished. Despite the beating she had taken, she pulled herself to her feet without assistance and walked up the ramp under her own power. She punctuated the moment by cracking open a can of Pepsi to signify that her career was far from over. The fourth match of Life Sentence brought a spectacle that had been heavily promoted in the lead-up to the event. Mike Awesome versus The Big Show in what was billed as the biggest ladder match of all time. Both men entered already known for their size. Big Show standing over 7 feet tall, and Mike Awesome at 6'7". Yet the stipulation pushed the concept of a ladder match into completely uncharted territory. Rather than retrieving an object, the winner would be determined simply by scaling a 40-foot ladder and standing on top of it, a task that added both physical strain and real risk to the outcome. The match quickly showcased why Mike Awesome is often regarded as one of the most athletic heavyweights of his era. For someone of his stature, the speed, agility, and range he demonstrated were striking. At the same time, Big Show's sheer size turned even the simplest exchanges into powerful collisions. The key turning point arrived at ringside, where Awesome managed to lift Big Show and deliver an awesome bomb through a table, a feat that not only emphasized Awesome's strength, but also created the opening he needed. With Big Show temporarily down, Awesome made his way to the stage area, where the towering ladder had been positioned. The structure dominated the arena, dwarfing even these two massive competitors. As Awesome began climbing, each step highlighted the instability of the ladder and the height involved. Big Show eventually pulled himself back to his feet. Awesome reached the top and managed to stand upright, securing the official victory. With Big Show now beneath the ladder and closing in, Awesome was faced with an immediate problem. The ladder was too tall to safely climb down. Awesome made a split-second decision that transformed the match from a physical contest into a historic visual. He launched himself off the top of the 40-foot ladder, diving feet first toward the Big Show. Match 5 brought the first championship clash of the night, as both sets of tag titles were placed on the line in a meeting between ECW's Impact players, Lance Storm and Justin Credible, and the WWF's tag team champions, the Acolytes. The matchup carried more than gold at stake. It represented a confrontation between two very different forms of dominance within their respective companies. The Impact players entered with the confidence and precision that had made them ECW's premier team. Storm's technical efficiency, paired with Credible's aggression, gave them an edge in timing and coordination, attributes that had secured their place atop the ECW tag division. On the opposite side stood Farouk and Bradshaw, a duo whose reputation extended beyond their championship reign. Within the WWF locker room, the Acolytes were widely known as enforcers, veterans called upon by management when a message needed to be sent to rising stars or talent who required grounding. Their physical presence alone often shifted the tone of any match. From the opening moments, the bout delivered exactly what the circumstances predicted: a physical, straightforward contest where neither team backed down. The Impact players attempted to set the pace with quicker exchanges and targeted offense, but the Acolytes consistently forced the match into the kind of brawling environment they excelled in. The WWF champions gradually asserted control. Justin Credible became isolated, and despite the Impact players' attempts to recover their footing, the balance had turned. Bradshaw seized the final opening, delivering the clothesline from hell with the force that has long defined his style. The Impact secured the 3 count, ending the match and bringing both sets of tag team titles into WWF possession. With this result, the Acolytes not only retained their own gold, but also claimed ECW's tag championships, marking a significant shift in the night's momentum. The score tightened once again. The 6th match of Life Sentence presented a first-time ever encounter between Rhino and Mankind, a meeting of two competitors known for entirely different expressions of brutality. Mankind entered as one of the WWF's most recognizable figures, someone whose career had been built on a willingness to endure punishment at levels most wrestlers would never consider. Rhino, meanwhile, represented a younger, more explosive force within ECW, combining raw power with surprising versatility. From the outset, Mankind found himself on the defensive. Rhino's offense was relentless, and his control of the match highlighted the physical disparity between the two at this stage of their careers. The ECW competitor targeted Mankind with the kind of intensity that has defined his reputation, driving him around ringside and maintaining pressure throughout. Despite the punishment, Mankind remained characteristically difficult to keep down. His ability to absorb damage, often to an unsettling degree, kept the match alive even as Rhino dictated much of its pace. The turning point arrived when the action spilled to the floor. In a moment that spoke to Mankind's resourcefulness as much as his toughness, the exposed flooring became the deciding factor. Rhino overcommitted. Mankind responded with a double-arm DDT directly onto the exposed ground, a move that shifted the entire trajectory of the match in an instant. With Rhino stunned, Mankind secured the cover at ringside and claimed the victory, reversing what had been a difficult match and adding another point to the WWF's tally. With this win, the WWF narrows the gap once again, tightening the overall score and keeping the rivalry firmly in contention as the event moves forward. Match 7 brought another major championship encounter to Life Sentence, a double title unification match between ECW television champion Rob Van Dam and the WWF Intercontinental Champion Ken Shamrock. This first-time ever meeting carried both promotional prestige and stylistic intrigue, particularly given the stark contrast in the competitors' backgrounds. Rob Van Dam entered with his signature combination of flexibility, precision striking, and acrobatic offense, a hybrid style influenced by martial arts but filtered through the unrestrained environment of ECW. Ken Shamrock, in contrast, represented legitimate combat credentials. His history in mixed martial arts gave him a level of authenticity and technical intensity few wrestlers could match. The core question surrounding the match was simple. Could RVD's fluid, high-risk approach hold up against someone with Shamrock's real-world fighting pedigree? The last man standing stipulation offered Van Dam opportunities that wouldn't exist under standard rules, allowing him to lean into his creative offense and use the environment to offset Shamrock's grounding techniques. Even so, Shamrock's power and submission expertise remained a constant threat throughout the match, forcing RVD to stay in perpetual motion. The decisive moment came when Van Dam introduced a ladder into the match, turning the ring into a vertical battlefield. As Shamrock struggled to recover from a sequence of high-impact strikes, RVD climbed to the top of the ladder and delivered the 5-star frog splash, a move made even more dramatic by the added height. The impact left Shamrock unable to beat the 10 count, securing both championships for Rob Van Dam. With this victory, RVD became a double champion, unifying the ECW television and WWF Intercontinental titles. More importantly for the night's stakes, ECW moved ahead 4-3, regaining momentum as Life Sentence moved deeper into its final matchups. The 8th match of Life Sentence brought one of the most personal confrontations of the entire card, Shane Douglas versus Triple H, in an ambulance match built on years of tension, accusations, and professional resentment. Across the wrestling world, comparisons between the two had persisted for years, with many claiming that Triple H borrowed heavily from elements associated with Douglas, his presentation, his attitude, even aspects of his persona. The difference, of course, was platform. Triple H operated under the expansive reach of the WWF machine, allowing him to shape his legacy on a global scale. Douglas never had that luxury, and the imbalance fueled the animosity surrounding their meeting. For Shane Douglas, this match represented more than brand pride. It was an opportunity to confront a long-standing grievance directly, on a stage where perception and politics converged. Triple H, meanwhile, entered the bout with both the confident posture and the institutional backing that had defined his rise. The ambulance match format offered no pins or submissions, only the ability to incapacitate an opponent long enough to load them into the vehicle. The match itself delivered the intensity expected from two men with deep-rooted disdain for one another. Strikes were deliberate, pacing was heavy, and every moment near the ambulance carried a sense of finality. The closing moments tilted toward the outcome many anticipated. Triple H emerged victorious, leaving Douglas's long-awaited opportunity for retribution unfulfilled. With this match concluded, the WWF adds another point as the event moves toward its final and decisive encounters. The 9th match of Life Sentence delivered a first-time encounter between two of wrestling's darkest personas. Raven, freshly returned from WCW and representing ECW, versus The Undertaker, in the very match that shaped so much of Undertaker's mythology, the Coffin match. The stipulation alone tilted the psychological landscape heavily toward The Undertaker, whose legacy is intertwined with this environment, while Raven entered hoping to redefine his standing in ECW by conquering one of the most iconic figures in WWF history. The atmosphere surrounding the match carried its own weight. Raven's brooding, cerebral presence contrasted with Undertaker's cold, ritualistic aura, creating an unusual dynamic where both competitors operated from a place of psychological intensity rather than traditional athletic rivalry. Raven sought to use his return as a moment of personal reinvention. Undertaker, on the other hand, approached the match with the familiarity of someone defending his own creation. As the match unfolded, Raven's attempts to disrupt Undertaker's rhythm showcased strategy over power, but the challenge proved monumental. The Undertaker gradually imposed his will, shifting the momentum with the authority that has defined him through multiple eras. Raven's resilience kept him in the contest longer than expected, but the inevitable turning point arrived when Undertaker executed the tombstone, delivering a final blow that left Raven unable to resist what followed. In a symbolic conclusion, Undertaker placed Raven into the coffin and slammed the lid shut, securing another victory for the WWF. The moment felt both decisive and poetic, given the thematic connection between Undertaker's legacy and the stipulation itself. With this outcome, the WWF takes the lead at 5-4. ECW began the night with momentum, but as the marquee matches have unfolded, the shift has become apparent. The pressure of the larger stages and the opponents occupying them has started to show, leaving ECW in a precarious position as the event heads toward its conclusion. The co-main event of Life Sentence brought one of the night's most high-stakes encounters, Taz defending the ECW World Heavyweight Championship against The Rock, a global superstar and arguably one of the two biggest names in the industry at this point in time. With the running score showing ECW trailing, this match carried enormous weight. A loss here wouldn't just cost Taz his title, it would leave ECW in a near impossible position heading into the final match of the evening. Taz entered with the intensity and legitimacy that have defined his presence in ECW, but he faced a challenger whose popularity and power within the WWF structure made him a formidable threat. Even before the bell rang, the no-holds-barred stipulation granted both men the freedom to push the match to its extreme, and early on it became evident that The Rock was beginning to take control. As the match progressed, The Rock appeared to be closing in on the finish, signaling that another point for the WWF and a major shift in championship gold was imminent. But before he could complete the pin, the entire match unraveled in a moment that reshaped the night. Paul Heyman charged into the ring and struck the referee with a steel chair, stopping the count before it could begin. The Rock, furious, abandoned the pin attempt and immediately pursued Heyman up the ramp. Rhino exploded onto the scene, driving The Rock down with a devastating gore on the ramp, an intervention that instantly shifted the balance. Rhino dragged The Rock back to the ring and rolled him inside. Heyman returned to ringside as Taz capitalized, launching The Rock through a table with a T-bone suplex, a fitting exclamation mark in a match filled with interference and escalating tension. With the official still down, Heyman made his own count, slapping the mat 3 times to secure the result. While the legality of that count remains questionable, the outcome was unmistakable. Taz retained the ECW World Championship. It took assistance from both Heyman and Rhino, but Taz survived the challenge, and more importantly for the night, ECW earned the crucial point they desperately needed. The scoreboard on the Titantron updated immediately, 5-5. With everything now tied, the event moved into its main event with both companies standing on equal footing, and the future of one brand hanging in the balance. The main event of Life Sentence brought 2 of the industry's most notorious brawlers face to face for the first time ever, on a stage where the fate of both companies hinged on the outcome. The Sandman, representing ECW, entered with the biggest opportunity of his career, a chance to dethrone Stone Cold Steve Austin and deliver the final point his promotion needed to survive. Opposite him stood the WWF champion, a competitor in peak form, whose dominance and unpredictability had made him one of the most unstoppable forces of the era. Before Sandman could even swing his Singapore cane, Austin cut him off, setting the tone for a match driven by intensity rather than strategy. It was apparent early on that Sandman was giving everything he had, understanding the magnitude of the moment, but Austin entered the match in a mindset few could match. His momentum throughout this period of his career was unmatched, and attempts to derail him rarely lasted long. The match built toward a chaotic crescendo in the ring where a ladder had already come into play. As the two battled for control, Austin seized the decisive moment, delivering the stunner. Both men crashed awkwardly onto the ladder beneath them, amplifying the impact, but Austin recovered quickest and secured the pinfall. With that 3 count, the WWF not only retained its top championship, but officially won the event. But things weren't over just yet. As Stone Cold climbed the turnbuckle to celebrate his hard-fought victory, the ECW champion Taz reappeared in the ring, delivering an unbelievably devastating German suplex directly onto the ladder that was laying in the ring. The ECW champion Taz had taken out both The Rock and Stone Cold in the same night. It doesn't get any bigger than that. Taz, now wearing Stone Cold's entrance vest, grabbed both title belts and climbed the ladder to close the show. If you enjoyed this one, be sure to also check out the WCW 1999 version.